All right, let's bring in Jamie McLennan today for Pro-Am Sports. If you've not yet subbed to our YouTube channel, please do. We would appreciate the support over there as well. Noodles, you know what we've been talking about in the first hour? Andy Strickland's informed speculation on Mikko Rantanen possibly being open to coming to the Oilers in free agency. I can't see a world where it happens, but what do you think of that yesterday?
Well, I think it's what's cool about stuff is if you build it, they will come. And now what's happening is, you know, I said this, I can't remember who I was talking to yesterday. I said, sometimes every city is not for everybody. You know, I grew up in Edmonton. You guys knew I grew up in St. Albert. I can speak that it's not for everybody as far as the weather, all of that fun stuff. But if you have a program and you've got the two best players in the world playing in it, a lot of people want to come. Just ask, you know, Victor Arvidsson, ask Jeff Skinner, you know, players like that, John Klingberg. Like, so that's the thing now. Rantanen, of course, Rantanen. Hey, in a perfect world, do you want to play with McDavid? Yeah, I'll try it. We'll see how it unfolds. You know, so yeah, you can wish in one hand, and what's the saying? I'm not going to say it. So there you go. See which one fills up first. So, you know, honestly, it's a great thought process, but let's see how the season unfolds. He's playing with his best friend, Sebastian Aho in Carolina, so he might want to extend there. You never know.
We got some other things I want to get to, but just quickly on Carolina, do you think with Rantanen there, they surpass Washington as the top team out east?
I don't know. I don't think so, because I would ask who's stopping pucks for them. Like, that's the biggest thing. Freddie Anderson is back, but can you trust Freddie Anderson to be healthy for a long playoff run? Can you trust Kochetkov? Because he's got a little bit of Dominic in him. Unpredictable in the net. It's just he doesn't play like Dominic Hasek. That's the difference. So that's I think the biggest question mark for me is I like their team. I think they got tremendous depth. Do they trust their goaltending enough to go deep in the playoffs? And, you know, listen, it's not like Charlie Lindgren and Logan Thompson have long histories in the playoffs, but both that tandem's been as good as anybody in the NHL this year. So especially Logan Thompson. So, you know, that's where I think there might be a question mark. And to be honest, I don't think these teams are done. That's the thing. I don't know if there's a standalone powerhouse in the East. There's lots of good teams, but I don't think there's like a juggernaut out in the East. So you add Rantanen, maybe you add a few more or one or two pieces at the deadline that puts you into that juggernaut conversation.
Noodles, where do you think this, on the other side of this, and we won't talk about the Blackhawks involved in the deal because there's really no point, but for the Colorado Avalanche, I mean, they're occupying wildcard one this morning. We've talked, you know, kind of a top-heavy-ish team. They do get some pieces back. I think we all understand why kind of the deal was made if you're not going to re-sign Mikko Rant, but just take us in, like, to the room, that type of thing. Like, I know the talent on the ice can't be replicated here, but what does that do to a room? We all saw Nathan McKinnon, you know, down in the dumps about it all. But, like, how ultimately do you see the rest of the season for the Avalanche going? I'm a playoff team, sure, but how much do you see this kind of affecting? Or maybe do you see this as, you know, are you drawing some positives out of it in any certain way?
Well, right now, you're not going to draw any positives out of it because on paper, you lost the trade, right? Yeah. Rantanen is the best player. Now, if I'm Nathan McKinnon, if I'm Jared Bednar, I say to Chris McFarland and Joe Sakic, what's the end game here? Because they're going to have money to play with. So who else is coming in here? Because Chris McFarland, I respect what he did. And I actually respect what they've done all season. Don't like their goaltending? Let's get two new ones.
Yeah.
And they got better goaltending. Like their goaltending's better now than it was at the start of the season. Chris McFarland said, I didn't like my depth. So what he's looking at, and you mentioned top heavy, what he's looking at is teams like Dallas, teams like Winnipeg, teams like Edmonton, teams like Vegas, and going, do we have the horses to beat them in a 7-game series? Yes, we've got top-end talent and arguably the best players in the world, you know, in McKinnon, in Makar. But after that, there's a big drop-off. So he's saying we need more depth because a lot of these teams around us have tremendous depth. So I would say right now, everybody's down in the dumps. I find it hard to believe that they didn't go to McKinnon and say, hey, we're trading this guy off your line. And McKinnon would say, okay, But what's the end game? And everybody's pointing, well, the end game might be his best buddy there in Pittsburgh. Well, I don't know. I mean, that's they're saying right now, absolutely not. Sidney Crosby's not going anywhere. If Pittsburgh loses 10 in a row and early March comes around, all he has to say is, I had to change of heart. I decided I wanted to go somewhere. So I don't know. The jury's still out, because what if they're after Nazem Kadri from Calgary? What if they're after guys that they've won from before, and you're looking to add to the depth? So I want to see the finished product before I judge as to what the whole big plan was here, because right now it's still incomplete.
Jamie McLennan with us here on the Nielsen Show this morning, brought to you by Pro-Am Sports. We mentioned goaltending in there with Carolina a few moments ago. Calvin Pickard has won hockey games for the Edmonton Oilers, and we were talking about it this morning a little bit. Would you sprinkle him in a little bit more? And I wanted to clarify, this is not an anti-Stuart Skinner take. It's just play Pickard more and rest Skinner a little bit more take.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it. Skinner played 82 games last year, including playoffs. If you can get that number down, all it does is and not hemorrhage the goaltending. So what has he won in his last 9 of 10 or 8 or 9? I can't remember. I watched the broadcast
he's
the
won
other
9
night.
of 10, yeah.
So he's won 9 of 10. So they trust him to put him in the net. So you don't have to run Skinner through the roof. And if they've got a week where they play 5 games in 7 nights, or 5 and 8, something like that, you can find maybe 2 starts for Pickard instead of 1. And if you trust to put him in, listen, this guy won a playoff game for them last year. It's not like he's he's not a Jamie McLennan who's going to give an off night for a Kippersoft where Kipper's playing 75 or Luongo. Like this guy. So if you could get, let's say in a perfect world, Skinner played 58 last year in the regular season. If you could get him to 54 or 53 or something like that, find 5 extra starts for Pickard, maybe a little bit more, get him down to 50. All you do is you're resting a guy that you believe can get you to that next level. And, I think it really, it helps with the scenario. I still believe, maybe I'm in the minority and I don't believe that they need to do this, but I do think they should add a goaltender at the deadline for depth, because if Stuart Skinner, knock on wood, something goes wrong and tweaks a groin, you're with Pickard and Oliver Rodriguez, or however you pronounce his name.
Yeah, Rodriguez.
Rodriguez. That's not a tandem that's going to scare anybody. So, if you're adding somebody at the deadline, it's a depth person. It doesn't disrupt the team, but it's somebody with either pedigree or with experience in the league. Because Rodriguez, of what I've seen of him, I don't think he's ready for the NHL, and that would be a lot to ask if there was ever an injury or inconsistency. You're adding depth in every other position. I hope they have depth in that position when the chips are down.
Jamie, two more places I want to go. A lot of people are asking on the text line and some on the chat. Did you see the Mark Stone Highkin play last night?
Yes.
What do you think of that? It seemed awkward to me.
It was very awkward. Obviously, he's not trying to take his knee out, but his shoulder takes his knee out because he's diving for the puck. And if you're watching the broadcast, I think it was Ray Ferraro was like, what is he doing? Because it's such an awkward play. Like, I don't think Highkin embraced himself for that, because that's a play where nobody's going to dive at that puck. If anything, somebody's going to try and hit you, try and do something. But to dive in that area at a mid-ice, and again, I don't think it was an egregious play. It was an egregious play, but I don't think it was malicious. I don't think he tried to take his knee out, but that didn't look good. That looked like a hyperextension. That looked like something didn't go right there for Highkin, because, the actual collision was ugly. Again, I don't think Stone was trying to hurt him, but I just didn't understand the thought process of diving for a puck there, as opposed to just maybe using your stick or using your body, which Stone is one of the best in the league at stripping pucks and turning pucks over. But I didn't like the play.
The other place I wanted to go, and Reed Wilkinson was talking about this yesterday, and we were going to discuss a little bit after we're done chatting with you. The Athletic article talking about NHLers nowadays not really just going out as a team and tying one on and and take some gummies after a road trip and play video games. And the boys asked me about it because I was on Reed's show briefly yesterday, and I said I think it's just society now. Like I know it's not just a hockey exclusive
standard
thing.
night
Like
for noodles, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Jamie, what'd you make of the way the game has changed so much off the ice?
Well, okay. Keep in mind, Ed, life has changed. So, for me to talk about being at a bar in 2004 or 2000
with those jeans.
and with my, Jordache jeans on or whatever, that True Religion jeans.
You're not playing the next day because you're behind Kipper. Like, you don't have to worry
exactly.
about that. Yeah,
exactly. But I'm not joking I've seen guys strip down naked in a bar and serving drinks. Like, how's that? You think Matthias Janmark is going to do that? You know what I mean? Like, it's just different. Life has changed. I would say the other thing too, with people who, you go out boozing the night before a game and the night before practice, you feel a hangover. Nowadays, again, I don't have any experience with this stuff. I feel like I should because I've got young children that are going to probably experiment. But, guys take a gummy now and there's no hangover. They can get up, they can skate, they can, perform at a high level. Nutrition's changed, education's changed. So it's hard. It is different. I'll tell you an example. We had a very tight team in Calgary in 2004. After practice, there'd be 12 of us that would go for lunch. Nowadays, lunch is provided.
Yeah, you just grab it at the rink.
Yeah,
that's it.
You grab it at the rink, you take it in a to-go thing, and you go home. We used to go, where are we going for lunch? And then lunch turned into dinner, and then dinner turned into beers, and we do it all over the next day type of thing. That's not the case. Like, we would go to the Mongoli grill and put 30 pounds of food in a bowl, get it cooked up and eat it and get our picture taken on the wall. Like, that's the type of stuff you do. And then you turn that in, hey, we're going to go to Joey's Chinook Center and have a bunch of drinks, and then we'll end up at some bar. Like, life has changed. It's different. Nowadays, camera phones,
it changes things.
It changes everything. How would you feel? And believe me, I would love it. But if I saw, people snapping pictures of McDavid and Draisaitl having, and you know what, if it was innocently having a glass of wine the night before the game, people would be like, oh, they're not focused. They're not there. And that's not because a picture tells 1,000 words. We don't know what they're doing. We don't know the context of it. So I think guys are like, to hell with that. We're not going to put ourselves in that situation. So it's just, life is a little bit different. I wish there was some old school, and I do believe there is some old school players still out there that enjoy themselves and maybe walk that gray area line, but it's few and far between nowadays.
As always, buddy, great insight. We appreciate it, and we'll do it again next week.
Thanks for having me, guys.
There you go. That's Jamie McLennan. He's a beauty.